Ahem, ahem, ahem. Hi everyone, Crothany Mag Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Viagra Boys album, Cave World. This is the third full-length LP of Sweden's own Viagra Boys. Within a matter of several years, these guys have become one of the best and most enjoyable, most fantastic, most fun and interesting post-punk bands on the scene, but they did not gain their success, at least in my opinion, by being merely an exercise in nostalgia, just merely holding to the genre's more traditional forms, as their grime cake productions, sleazy lyrics, and absurd sense of humor not only are pretty refreshing for this style, but feel very specific to them. And it's great to hear on this new LP, not only is all of that stuff carrying over into this new batch of songs, but on this thing we're also getting an expanded instrumental palette, as well as some pretty conceptual lyrical themes, with a lot of songs in the tracklist here focusing on the dysfunction of the human condition, which of course is presented in the frame of the modern day with all of the paranoia and hatred and conspiracy theories that are spread across social media these days, but that's also juxtaposed against this image of humanity as apes, rudimentary life forms that were destined for the tragedy that we're currently in due to our origins, which plays out on tracks like the cognitive trade-off hypothesis, which sees frontman Sebastian Murphy ghoulishly theorizing about how we were kicked out of the trees, like in the early days, left to fend for ourselves, and had to essentially develop other traits in order to survive. There's even a point where he questions whether or not this change in evolution and cognition has anything to do with his suffering from ADD. And with all of the colorful tones, cartoony vocals, along with the super deep and murky drums and bass on this track, which are incredibly groovy, the song couldn't sound more like the weirdest Gorillaz recording that you've ever heard. Some of these themes I was mentioning also turn up on the opener, Baby Criminal, which presents an idea that I think has gotten a lot of exploration as of late, especially with the recent jump in mass shootings committed by very young men. And yeah, the song essentially asks, how do you go from an innocent little baby to a violent, bloodthirsty young adult or adult? This question is set to wailing saxophones, driving dance beats, and guitars that don't know whether or not they're trying to soundtrack a dance floor, a noise rock concert at a small venue, or like a surf guitar competition. Still, it sounds awesome all the same. There's also Troglodyte, which features one of my favorite instrumentals here, with a driving beat and lots of quirky, colorful bits of guitar and synthesizer. This track sounds like it's cut from the Devo playbook in the best way possible. But this is also a very tense and kind of angry track about going crazy and violent. But the contextual nods in the lyrics are a bit more specific and current. Talking about a guy who's sitting on his computer and writing about things that he hates, thinking all the news is fake, and how if these people were alive during the time of apes, they would have been shunned out of, the ape society as unevolved. There's even a point on this record where Sebastian Murphy is embodying the mindset of one of these individuals, specifically on the track Creepy Crawlers, which is not so much a song as much as it is a rant about 5G and lizard people and adrenochrome and vaccines, all set to a spiral of never-ending noisy rock instrumentation. And yeah, while it's not exactly catchy, it is more intense and hilarious, frankly, than many of the other cuts here. Many of the ideas I've been talking about so far come to a head on the closing track,
Return to Monkey,
which kicks off with this "Leave Society, Be a Monkey" tagline, and essentially advocates for a lot of these hateful and kind of out of control people to essentially separate themselves from society and go live in the jungle instead. Hey, you hate getting vaccinated? Nobody needs to get vaccinated in the jungle. Where Sebastian says they spend their time throwing shit at each other, hanging out, and masturbating. The blistering noise rock passages to continue past this point are, of course, exhilarating and stellar, and I absolutely love the measured spoken word outro for this song and the record as a whole, which makes the album and everything it's about feel like a social experiment of some sort that has now gone awry, and it's getting shut down, reset, cleaned off, all for things to play out maybe the same way again. Which, again, is kind of an interesting and somewhat Twilight Zone-esque note to end on. Now, outside of this, there are some other deep cuts and singles on the record that I think are quite good, be it Ain't No Thief, which is a track that's all about aggressively thrusting off these allegations of having stolen something, even though the items in question and the scenarios they were acquired in are so oddly specific they had to have been stolen. This track also features one of my favorite instrumentals on the LP. It kind of sounds like something out of a chase scene from a 1970s cop movie. Like the dirtiest, post-punkiest funk ever. There's also Punk Rock Loser, who's a very slow pacing. When I first heard it, didn't exactly win me over, but the loose, messy grooves and deadpan swagger have worked their charms on me as I've revisited the song again and again. And lyrically, the track is really just a perfect mix of charisma and also self-deprecation, and I like that these two elements are blended so finely and so aggressively, you really can't tell like where the track lands on that spectrum. The whole thing is so half-hearted in its performance, it's like it's trying to unachieve, but the fact that it doesn't give a shit is what makes it so attractive. There's also Big Boy, which is a very odd and kind of lo-fi moment on the album with some acoustic guitars in the background, a bunch of looping, cycling drum beats, some tongue-in-cheek falsetto harmonies on the chorus too. The whole track sounds like a freaky hip-hop 90s singer-songwriter jam, which I think is the best kind of detour for this album at this point, even with it being a bit of a love song in a way, if you could kind of interpret it to be so, with it having as twisted a presentation as it does. There's also Jason Williamson of Sleaford Mods fame on the back end of the track doing one of his trademark rants, which I think is a perfect addition to the song. And then we have ADD, which I think is the most electronic sounding track on the record with its persistent drum and synth sequences. A lot of the track is about the inability to focus. The cute and simple dance groove along with the sort of sloppy keys make it sound like it's trying to be a tongue-in-cheek club hit. The more electronic aesthetics also fit with lines like, "I hope they replace my brain with a computer." And flow-wise, the track serves as a nice calm before the storm of the fiery closer. I'm not really sure what to say about this album past this point other than I am really impressed with it on multiple levels, be it the production, the instrumentation, the overall performances, specifically the vocal performances, the writing and concept spread across the record too, how tight and fantastically flowing the track list is. It's really all killer, no filler, and even the interludes on the project are effectively applicated. This is handily the best project yet, in my opinion, from Viagra Boys. It's maybe my favorite rock record so far this year, and it's really everything I've loved about the band up until this point, turned up to fucking 11. Sure, there are some tracks here that don't play as effectively into the more conceptual notes of the album as well as other tracks do, and there are some parts that I think come off a little samey in terms of the drum grooves or maybe even the vocals. Like I think the record in some ways could be a tad bit more versatile, but honestly, that's the extent of my complaints with this record. It kicks ass. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I'm mega impressed with it, and I'm going to be sitting on this one and digesting it for a while. I'm feeling a strong 9 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Viagra Boys, forever.